My name is Marcus Kolga. I've been monitoring, analyzing, and trying to expose foreign influence operations targeting Canada and our allies since around 2007. I was one of 20 Canadians named to the PRC sanctions list. Being on the China sanctions list is actually quite problematic in terms of my travel. It's also time consuming in terms of briefings. I have briefings with Global Affairs and also with law enforcement about my personal safety. And so I've had to buy cameras around my house. My children and my wife have also been briefed on the sort of things they need to look out for. So transnational repression isn't all that new. It's been used by our foreign authoritarian enemies for many decades already. But it's recently become an increasingly obvious problem whereby we're seeing the PRC, for example, target various different vulnerable communities. It starts out by the regime, perhaps through its consulates, local consulates, identifying individuals or groups that might be critical of its actions. It may start grooming journalists who might be ideologically aligned with the regime, or even elected officials, senators, academics. The second step is the preparation of those operations. So that might be the preparation of disinformation to target a regime critic and making sure that the enablers, so again, maybe it's an elected official or an ideologically aligned journalist, has those materials at hand so that when the time comes to execute the operation, they have the knowledge they need and the information they need to attack that specific target. The third part is the execution phase. These range from, again, disinformation, defamation campaigns, emails that are sent to a targeted individual, threatening them with violence, and threats to their family back in Hong Kong. This actually happened to a Canadian member of parliament, Michael Chong. This is well documented. The worst forms of intimidation or transnational repression are the ones that involve physical violence. This could mean physical harassment, vandalism, and this has happened in Toronto against Hong Kong pro-democracy businesses, for example. Well, the Chinese government has endless amounts of resources to dig as deep as they really want to on many of its targets, especially those in the Chinese diaspora, the ones that use Chinese government-controlled social media apps like WeChat, even TikTok. So they can really get a lot of information on you. They can trace the sort of posts that you put up. They can trace where you're going. They can trace the movements of your family members as well, the ones that might remain in Hong Kong or in China. The PRC also engages in physical surveillance. So that means following individuals, targets here in Canada, mapping out their movements, reporting on those movements. It may also include hacking of personal devices, your phone, laptops, the placement of surveillance software. So following everything that you do on your phone, tracking all of that information being sent back to Beijing. And in the worst cases, through hacking, Beijing might place incriminating evidence of some other kinds on your phone for future use. So the Chinese government doesn't just target its own citizens. It doesn't only target diaspora communities here in Canada. It also targets journalists. It also targets elected officials. Erin O'Toole, who was the leader of the Conservative Party in 2019, was specifically called out in Chinese state media just before that election and criticized for being xenophobic or racist. That's not the case. Mr. O'Toole and his party had a very strong platform that was critical of the Chinese regime in its repression of the Uyghur and Tibetan and Hong Kong minorities in that country. And for that, he was targeted. A candidate for the Conservative Party there, Joe Tay, who had a bounty of $1 million Hong Kong dollars placed on his head just before Christmas in order to intimidate him to step back from running for public office due to his criticism of the Chinese regime and its crackdown on Hong Kong protesters. And so I think there's been a recognition that PRC influence operations have been a problem in Canada already for over a decade. It's elevated the impact on the targets of transnational repression and has even brought it to the attention of parliamentarians. New legislation was just passed about a year ago, Bill C-70, intended to address some of these threats. The enactment of a foreign influence transparency registry, requiring anyone in Canada who is working with the Chinese government or any other foreign authoritarian regimes to register with the government if they're approaching a member of parliament or if they're engaging with media. So it's really key that Canadians are aware of the media that they're consuming. I think it sounds like a very basic and sort of rudimentary point, but making sure that when you see something online, whether it's on Twitter, X, or Facebook, or Instagram, or TikTok, that you have an understanding of who's posting it, where this information is coming from. If anyone watching this feels like they are being targeted by harassment, some intimidation, even surveillance, if you suspect that there's some sort of malware placed on your devices, there are a number of things that you can do. The first thing that you want to do is call the RCMP. They have a hotline set up, a web form and a telephone number, and make sure that you keep records of all of these instances. So if you're receiving emails, don't throw away the emails, save them, put them in a folder. If you feel like someone is going to threaten you, call 911, make sure you report it. And like I said, don't hesitate to do that.